Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Feeling ready to kick your sales into high gear? We're here to help. Check out our sales coaching and consulting services at predictablerevenue.com. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Chris Riklin. He's the co-founder in charge of revenue at Topline. We're going to talk about Chris's founder journey. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Excited to talk more.
I'm excited. This is going to be an interesting one. We're going to have to walk a line because we're going to talk about your revenue story. But fair warning to the audience, part of this is you're using your own tool for some of the journey. So we're going to try and walk the line of like, this isn't a promo ad. Chris isn't paid to be here. I'm not getting anything out of it other than a good conversation with Chris. We just met. I really liked the story. I was really interested in the product and I just wanted to jump in and explore it. And we thought, hey, why don't we record it? So that's why Chris is here. I'm excited to hear the founder journey. First off, I love that you're in the sales role right now as the founder. I think too many founders abdicate this and they say, I'll just hire somebody to do that. But as people who have listened to the podcast more than a few times have probably heard me ramble about, it's not a sales role that closing that first $1 million in revenue. It's a function of product. And until you get to $1 million, you're not really ready for sales. You're not ready to bring a salesperson in. So I love that you're in there. Let's talk about where you are today. What's you're in charge of sales. What's your focus right now?
Yeah. So our focus is getting to 100 customers. That is a goal we've had for a long time, and we are almost there. And that's been a very exciting journey from the beginning. That's taken lots of different experiments and successes and changes. And I'm lucky that, yes, I'm in charge of the main sales motion. I'm in it day to day. I'm the one kind of tip of the spear talking to customers every day, but I have two co-founders, Alex and Jerry, who are extremely involved in that process and are also talking to customers and kind of working kind of within the go-to-market motion. So we have a maybe fairly unique founding team of 3 people. Obviously we each have different responsibilities, but that we're all kind of enjoying and deeply involved in that go-to-market and sales process.
That's pretty unique, actually. Typically you get a founder, a product. A founder is like the founder makes it be like a technical person, a product person, maybe a designer, occasionally a dirty sales person like ourselves, more commonly a go-to-market person. So how has the balance been with three people that could all do a similar role?
Yeah, so I think it's been, I guess the reason we're all in it is that the business we're building is, as you said at the intro, very much around helping other people with that go-to-market and business growth motion, and we kind of see it as a connected motion between product, marketing, and sales. And we each have our own very kind of unique experiences based in those kind of 3 specific areas, with me having the closest and deepest sales background. My background is I was more of an individual contributor at my previous company and kind of in the enterprise sales zone. And so I'm taking a lot of that learning, which, there's a lot of exact, learnings and transitions, and there's a lot of things that I've had to shape as I've joined a younger company, a startup that is working with, new types of customers and, trying to figure out the best strategies and tactics. And that's not, there's not already a repeatable enterprise sales process there. And that is now my job to take those learnings and systematize it and scale it.
Totally. I think this is one thing that founders that don't come from a go-to-market role or a sales role don't realize about hiring their first salesperson. Yeah, when you hire a salesperson, or when you are trying to get to those first 50, first 100 customers, first $1 million in revenue, what you need to do to go 0 to 1 is totally different than what an enterprise salesperson or any salesperson at an established sales org has experienced. There's so much building, there's so much randomness, there's so much you don't have the appropriate marketing asset, so you got to go build it yourself. There's so much, that part of the product doesn't exist yet. So I got to ask some more questions so I understand, because, hey, we actually, we missed this piece in our customer development, right? I'm curious, can you spend a minute and just kind of share what it's been like, a little bit more on the differences between being an enterprise rep at a company that's fully in flight versus being that first AE for your own company?
Yeah. I think the biggest difference is that you are running a huge amount of experiments in your sales motion, and really trying new things, new channels, new even new kind of closing strategies. Whereas in a repeatable motion, those strategies are very much set. So it's really that experimentation, I think, has been the biggest change, and honestly, that's why I changed, made the change, and kind of I can talk more about how I ended up in the position that I'm in with the co-founders of Topline, but it's something that I wanted, and I was craving that. Excuse me, I was craving that kind of more flexible, creative role, but I didn't want to get away from, obviously my core skill set, which is, listening, building relationships with customers, deeply understanding their problems, and then, having obviously needing to have a great product and service to sell them. But it's what I enjoy day to day. And so obviously the learning, not just the kind of soft skills of active listening and building relationships and rapport, but also the kind of deeper sales skills about running a sales process, and having processes to understand actual buyer behavior has been obviously super useful. And I feel like because of that, we're kind of ahead of the game in kind of the depth of our sales process and our ability to scale it. So I'm really excited about where we are on the team so far.
That's awesome. I feel like I had kind of a similar experience. I feel like the things that made me a terrible employee made me a great kind of first salesperson at my own company. Because the things that made me a terrible employee is I would question everything, and I wanted to understand how and why everything worked, every little process. And I worked for a like mostly small companies, but one really, really large company. They were great, for the size. They had an incredible sales force and yada, yada, yada. But as a human working for that org, I hated it, because I'm like, I'm going through 7 different layers to understand why this thing works, and like nobody can give me a straight answer. And then I'm like, well, why can't we do it differently? And like, this way is the better way. And they're like, oh, well, we got to change this in the playbook and this and this and that. And so the questioning everything. And then like after 18 months, if I was just repeating the same playbook, I'd be getting bored. And so I think the thing that I loved that served me really well is that I get bored really easily in the sales process. I didn't want to do the same thing over and over again, which kind of means I'm naturally a little bit more, I don't know, likely to test and iterate and always trying to find that next thing. I'm like a great first rep and a terrible 100th rep. I'm curious. It sounds like you have a similar experience.
No, and that just made me think of it. It's not even within the sales merchant itself. Obviously, there are experiments you can do and as I said, kind of change those tactics. But I think the biggest difference between a larger organization and a small organization, in my position now, is that not only do I have control over the way the sales process works, but how it integrates deeply with the product and how it integrates deeply with marketing. And I'm very lucky to have a co-founder that is, a marketing expert that has been working, for decades in marketing to the people that we are now trying to sell. And in my previous company experiences, I think people assume that larger companies have kind of connected marketing and sales teams, and kind of my experience was not that there actually kind of was a lean towards the enterprise sales motion as a means to an end by itself, and actually not being connected to who are the customers we're actually targeting, who are we bringing in, and then who are we closing, and how are we supporting them. And so kind of having the, the target market we do and what we're trying to achieve with helping other businesses grow, I think we really try to lean into ourselves. And again, with that kind of unique co-founding team, that we can stay connected. We talk every single day at the beginning of the day on specific topics, and then at the end of the day to kind of recap what's happened in the go-to-market of the day. And so we have a very, a very good culture around that. And then we move quickly to adjust and test new things or make tweaks to the entire process, not just the sales process.
On behalf of all the listeners who are founders that don't come from sales and don't have a marketing expert as a co-founder, you jerk. It's so hard in the early days, I came from sales. I started my life in marketing, and then I worked my way into sales, and even trying to, coming from sales and then trying to find a solid marketing person and find the right marketing channels to grow predictable revenue. I mean, obviously outbound was one, but we had a huge amount of inbound, and to try and figure all that out as somebody who came from sales, I identify as a salesperson. And by that, I mean, sales is my trade. Kind of like my friend is an electrician. He's got his red seal. I have a purple shirt, but I know how to sell. And there's no official designation. But to try and figure out, all right, now I got to figure out marketing. That's a daunting task, and it's such an advantage to have, somebody who can close, somebody who can generate some momentum. I talk to so many founders who are like, yeah, I can close people. I need you to help me get customers, prospects in front of me.
So it's an interesting way you frame, sales as the trade, because I kind of agree for myself. I've always been in a sales role for the last, decade plus, and I enjoy that. It's the thing I'm best at in the world, and hence the seat that I'm in today, and probably always will be in some ways. But I sometimes don't identify with the trade specifically, and kind of that being my kind of, definitely not my only kind of trade. And I think one word that I would use that I do also identify with is a kind of storyteller and relationship builder. And I think it is something that all founders can and should have, kind of in the way I think we both believe in founder-led sales, and that founders are obviously going to be the most passionate and knowledgeable about the thing that they're building. And kind of before, putting the pressure on yourself to become a salesperson, I'd say the first pressure should be how do you tell your story? And there are tons of frameworks and things out there that help people and companies tell their story. I think one that we leaned into pretty hard at the beginning to all get on the same page when we were starting Topline, summer, late summer, fall last year, was story brand framework, and really kind of mapping out, why do people care about this? What are the actual kind of journeys that we want to take our customers on? And that kind of impacts every bit of marketing material, as well as every bit of the sales, scripts and conversations and way we talk to our customers, and, build genuine empathy in their challenges of getting leads and getting business off the ground, and, kind of being in that same position and having the tools and the services to help them. So yes, definitely it's a privileged position to have a marketing expert on the team, but I see it as a necessity to build what we're building, because we are helping new companies get off the ground and generate more leads, better leads, and put that into an infrastructure, human and technical, right, that can help them close those leads, which, and that you've got to have all sides of that story. Otherwise you're not building a predictable business.
Totally. I mean, you almost said the name of the podcast, so yeah, I have to agree. Just like if you guys did anything other than what you do now, I would give you so much shit for calling yourselves Topline. It's you could be in the demand gen space or tennis, and that's it.
Well, the name is interesting because we see it. Obviously, the kind of top line revenue piece is nice. It's something that our kind of one of our big disqualifiers of customers and is people who don't want to grow, and who actually don't have a need to grow their revenue, or may not even like people who have enough leads and don't need help expanding their reach. They probably don't need us, and they can use tons of other tools and strategies, and there's lots on the market around that. But so that is a focus. But the other way we see Topline is more of like an adjective around being top of your industry, whatever that might be. And the reason the company started is we think that there was a ton of market inefficiencies around people who have the best product or service, and it's hard to be discovered, and it's hard to, as you said, it's hard to market at the beginning when you don't have that marketing expertise. And we're trying to create ways where people can access that kind of expertise or tool set of lead generation for specialized services and new companies that don't exist yet, right? When you're starting something new that no one knows about, there's nothing to search to find you, right? And we think a lot of big companies have that access to lead generation, and startups don't have, or new businesses in general, but definitely tech startups count in this, don't have access to the same tools. And that's kind of what we're building. That's our next big launch, and we're figuring that out. So I think it relates.
Funny, I was thinking about something. So I had a conversation with a founder this morning, and who said, and I've heard this like, I'm not exaggerating, I've heard it 1,000 times. I can close deals. I just need somebody to help me get the customers to show up to the Zoom meeting, or get the prospect to show up to a call, a Zoom, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about when I was first getting started, like, there's nothing scarier than staring down the barrel at a new demand gen channel. And like, I've got this product, you do your best to try and, talk to customers ahead of time and do your customer development and get some like soft commits on like, yeah, if I build it, you'll come. Great. Okay. You get some, it's hard to lock in LOIs or things like that. There's always this messy middle of like, okay, I've got to find an opportunity, then I got to build something, and then I got to show the people and be like, hey, is this what you think? Yes. And there's this kind of like messy loop where you got to test and iterate. And along the ways, you should probably pick up some customers, but then you kind of get to this point where you're like, okay, I think I feel like I've reached version 1, and you've spent the last, 3 months, 6 months, 18 months building this thing. And hopefully you've picked up a few like soft commits along the way, but now you're like, cool, where do I go? Like, what demand gen channel? And there's nothing scarier than like, I remember looking at SEO and being like, wow, we get like tons of inbound. I could hardly spell SEO. I was looking at our newsletter. I'm like, wow, we've got a huge newsletter. I'm like, how do I not fuck this up? I can only imagine. And like, I do had a cold call and send cold email. And so like, I was fine there. But cold email could be even scarier, where it's like, you can put so much effort in and get absolutely nothing out. At least with SEO, you put a bunch of effort in and you have these pages to show for them. Even if the pages are meaningless, even if they don't generate that much traffic, they probably still generate some traffic. With cold email, cold outbound, cold calling, you could spend all day cold calling. You get 8 connects, 0 of them move ahead, and you're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Nothing. I got nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that is a challenge that everyone will have and will continue to shift, right? Both of those things that you mentioned, SEO and cold calling, are going through massive technical and, societal shifts of the effectiveness and future of those channels in the first place, right? So that's very difficult for people to get a hold of and understand. Look at certain businesses and industries that will work and certain that won't. But both those channels specifically are going through interesting time right now. And that's just kind of why I guess I started with, we've been experimenting on all sorts of channels, and including, LinkedIn. Obviously we had some initial customers from, our own network, and I think I've heard on the podcast before, I totally agree that you want to get out of that as soon as possible, because otherwise you're not actually testing real demand for the product. And I think we've done a good job on going wider quickly, but learning from that, and also testing some partnership strategies that I haven't had time to flesh out yet. Referral programs like both customer referral but straight up affiliate programs, and we tested and put the bones on them, and so we know that they can scale, but that is, you have to make choices and scale those when you have a bit more time and resources.
And I probably have said words similar to that effect about like getting out of your first 10 as quickly as possible. If I could maybe sharpen my point there, the point is not to try and move away from your first customers that quickly. The point is, I think startups are all about timing, right? You have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources, and usually a limited amount of cash. Not always, but usually the things are pretty correlated, which means you only get a certain number of kicks in the can. I'm a big fan of like your first 10 customers should come from your customer development interviews. Your next 10 customers should come from referrals from those first 10. And that's the strongest signal that you can get for, hey, something is working here. Hey, we've got real strong product market fit. And I've probably rambled about the pirate funnel about, when you tell people about it, do they look up Dave McClure's metrics and then arrange them like a funnel, like a dirty salesperson like myself would. And that's the pirate funnel. But it's basically like, if you tell somebody about it, do they use it? If they use it, do they keep using it? If you ask them for some money, do they give you some money? And then do they tell their friends? And that's not exactly Dave's funnel, but it's close enough, right? And that's what you're looking for, is like going from those first 10 to those next 20. Because so many founders go from, okay, I've sold 5 units. You're like, cool, I've got product market fit. Now I'm going to hire 5 salespeople and I'm going to spend all these resources. And what you end up doing is you overinvest in a huge sales team. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you overinvest when you don't know exactly the direction that you're going, when you really should probably start small, and okay, let's see what we can learn from, these 20. And then how do we find some of the correlations? I remember I had this big enterprise company come to us and they're like, hey, we've got a goal to hit. You've probably heard of them. You might have advertised with them on their platform. They're like, we want 8 salespeople right now. We want 40 by the end of the year. And I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a sales guy. I'm like, money. It's all my brain could think of is like money. And I remember getting off the call and thinking like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard. Because, and we ended up, we gave them a price that was just like extreme. And it was one of those, like, we don't want to do this prices, but if you absolutely need us, this is what it's going to cost. It was one of those death march missions where like nobody's coming back from this, and it's not going to be a good experience, because they wanted to open up this new market that they'd never tested before, and they had zero data, and they wanted to hire 8 people in the first 3 months and then 40 people by the 6-month mark. And it's like, this is just
what?
Yeah, exactly. What we said was like, hey, if you really want to move quickly, fine, but you can't move quickly with a team of 40. And you're certainly not going to have enough proof points in the first 3 months. You'll probably have enough proof points to hire another 2 or 4 after 3 months, but you're certainly not going to have enough data to give us confidence that you're going to be able to hire 40. Because from an outsourced, salesperson's perspective, there's nothing worse than going through all the effort of hiring a team of 40 people, and then the client's like, it's not working. And then you're like, you got to say goodbye to 38 people that you just hired. And you're like, that's just, it was never winnable. Coming back to the resources conversation, so much of it's about timing and placing your bets. And you've only got so many chips, and you've got to make sure that you time the bets accordingly. And so I think that's where I was kind of going. A long-winded way of asking, your first 10 customers, where do they come from? Where do the next 10 come from?
Yeah. So the first 10, I think we kind of hit that pirate funnel, if you will, pretty well. I think the first 10 came from our networks and relationships. I mean, part of the reason we started the company is we had seen the difficulty of starting a specialized consulting business, and the CEO, Alex, is from a background of that kind of specialized consulting business. He also happens to be an incredible tech hacker and builder. So that's another one of those crazy advantages we have as a founding team, is that the person who was building the product and built the product originally had that firsthand knowledge of the market and was kind of solving his own problem. So, that's the industry we met in. And so that's where we started. And then I think we were surprised by the second kind of part of that funnel that those customers referred us to customers we did not think, weren't in that exact target market that we were looking at. And that has kind of continued and has been, both the kind of joy and challenge of creating a repeatable sales process that is that, obviously you're going to say yes to a lot of opportunities at, the early stage, like we are, but we've had a lot of different industries, a lot of different verticals and different sizes of companies, but they all do have these trend lines. So that was a bit of a surprise, kind of how broad that took us in the first 30 to 50 customers, and then but we've kind of, I think, done a good job reining it in and kind of creating repeatable channels. So
cool. So the first few were kind of all over the place. Where did the next 10 come from?
Well, I think the first few were actually pretty tight, and then the next 10 were all over the place because they were referrals in different industries.
Nice.
So yeah, our kind of initial 10 was pretty in the consulting industry and kind of the smaller, newer businesses who needed marketing and kind of growth support. And then from that, it kind of went in all sorts of different directions and scales. We would have, a 20 million ARR tech company wanting to use us, and I wasn't wanting to go into a 4-month long technical enterprise sales process when I was also trying to close 20 small business customers, right? And so that was like a very interesting and fun but difficult time when we were just getting going. And then it's kind of gone on from there in positive ways. But that was a surprise and definitely a learning.
Cool. Hey, and so first 10 were super tightly coupled. The next 10 were a little bit getting out there. Is it all still referral, word of mouth based, or are you starting to generate some?
Yeah, we're definitely, I like the partnership driven sales. So in the kind of markets that I knew, I tried to productize, if you will, some of that referral process, where if we were testing out some marketing channels and, getting a $50 to $100 cost per lead, why not incentivize someone to go and get you really warm connections at $50, $100 cost per lead. And so we were testing kind of those cost strategies across many different channels. I think probably wider than most because of the experiences we've had. But everything from kind of marketplaces to LinkedIn to affiliate programs to association, joining associations and being part of those, and traditional marketing channels. And they've all worked to some extent. And we're kind of still in that testing phase about where to really focus our fire. But I think that was really important to both test the channels and test the verticals that enjoyed our product the most. And it's led to some interesting direction.
Totally. I mean, I think the first question is like, who are we trying to reach? And then it's, how are we going to be able to reach them? What channels are we going to be able to reach? And then what do we say to them? And I think it's always interesting how those variables can change, and certain groups to customers are only available in certain on certain channels. You try and email engineers. And it's like, you would think it would work really well, but surprisingly, like from my experience, cold calls have actually worked really well, which is totally the opposite of what I thought. And so it's interesting how you've got to kind of test and iterate. One thing I wanted to double click on was partnerships, because I'm of the belief that for most startups, kind of under a few million in revenue that don't have a dedicated partnerships person, it's usually a waste of time. I've had so many companies, because we're predictable revenue. We got a decent brand. It's well known enough. We've so many companies that have come to us and like, let's do a partnership thing. And you're like, cool. And we spend, 6-8 weeks talking about partnership things, and you sign this and you get this training and this and that, and then nothing. So has partnerships been a different story for you? If so, why are you better than the rest of us?
So no, I think it's been a similar story, but maybe there's an in-between where I've definitely stopped myself from going down those non-repeatable partnership processes. But I challenged the team to kind of create a repeatable and easy to execute process, kind of a la the affiliate, if you will, kind of, if we're going to pay Facebook and Google a certain amount for lead, why not pay a partner immediately that same amount? And that's like been a very good channel for us, and is repeatable because we can execute that immediately with one document that is a template, and we send it and we can manage that program. But as soon as it gets customizable, where you have to track partner payments or give partner documents or training, it becomes immediately not worth my time, especially in the first 5-6 months when I was completely by myself, kind of on the day-to-day sales and taking every single call, every single demo. And it's tempting, but even though I love it, and it's definitely kind of what I moved into in the latter stages of my last 10-year journey, I had to cut myself off at this stage.
It's so tempting because there's these really big name companies. They're like, oh, we want you to be a partner. We want you to get certified to like do this and that. And then we'll send you revenue. We'll send you customers. You're like, oh, cool. This is amazing. You put all this work in. You're like, HubSpot wants to work with me. Oh, wow. I'm so honored. And then, you do all the thing, you get the cert, and then it's like, so I'm listed on your website now, and nothing, no shout against HubSpot. I don't even know if I think we were a partner or are a partner or have been a partner or something. I don't think we do a ton with them. But it's really exciting when somebody from a really big company inbounds to you. And I don't mean this as anything against HubSpot. Like, they were pretty upfront about their program. I think I was just really excited 5-6 years ago that I'm like, oh my God, HubSpot knows who we are and this and this and that. And on the flip side, it was just a salesperson at HubSpot. It's like, hey, these people could send us business. And that's really what the model is. If a large company reaches out to you, it's like, hey, let's partner. It's like, we want you to be a lead source for us, not the other way around. And it took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah. And I do think it is like, I do hope to get into it at a phase 2 pretty quickly, because I think, especially as a new company, you can create new channels and exciting things that haven't existed before. That's the whole point of entrepreneurship and startups, especially in our position that we're, helping businesses grow. And that's our, we want to democratize the access to those channels and those opportunities. So, it's undeniable that some companies, have done a great job in that zone. And there are, I'm sure there are tons of partners, early partners, who made half their revenue based on, those referrals and, created an incredibly successful business around it. So I think there's a big place for that, but you have to be ready for the scale and ready for the management of it. So yeah.
This exactly. You need a dedicated person. This can't be a founder off the side of the desk thing, no matter how tempting it is or how big and illustrious the brand. Right. And I say this, like, there are exceptions to every rule. Like, we've got 2 that we've worked with that send us business, and customers see or prospects see our faces or my ugly face on their website, which I think is probably bad for their SEO, but they put it up there anyway. And they reach out to us, we saw you on so-and-so website and we want to talk to you. And so there are exceptions to the rule, but in the whole lifetime of PR at 12 years now, 2 have actually sent us business and produced money for us. And we've probably had at least 100 conversations.
Interesting.
I'm curious, if the first 10 were kind of word of mouth, the second 10 were referrals, first 10 customer development, second were referrals, Then it kind of got a little bit random. Now you've got, a bunch of different channels. You're running a ton of experiments to try and find, okay, who are we trying to reach and how are we going to reach them? I'm curious, like, what does this next journey look like to you? Who are you trying to reach? And what channels do you think are going to, or what channels right now are the most promising to reach them?
Yeah. I guess who we're trying to reach is, we're reaching people who haven't had access to don't have the resources to hire a 4K marketing agency or a 4K, enterprise software product like HubSpot or Salesforce. Great tools, but, out of reach for most kind of early businesses. And if they're not out of reach, they're kind of in a funnel up. And so a lot of people have had a lot of frustrating experiences with kind of growth attempts. And that is generally our target market, is people who are starting new businesses or have been super frustrated by the expense and quality of software and services. We are a software with services company. I think that's kind of a trend that has happened while we've already been around. It's now kind of a new buzzword. And yeah, we do find like broad interest on advertising channels. Facebook and Google have been great, and people who are actively looking for those services, and then kind of more specified target market outreach on LinkedIn. We've been surprised by the wellness industry, even within the kind of coaching and consulting space that we operate in. The wellness industry, which would include facilities, individuals, and kind of groups of therapists or other kind of wellness practitioners and coaches and consultants, has been a very interesting space that we've kind of have zoned in on. So continuing to lean into those channels and grow them is a huge focus. And we've been, because of the success of some of those broader channels, and frankly using our own tools and some fun stuff around automation, AI, we've been able to basically fully automate our process of getting to demo, which I know a lot of people talk about, and a lot of consultants are out there saying, we promise to get you X amount of demos, and otherwise, whatever. And, we're trying to live that ourselves, to using tools and, marketing channels, and then kind of focus on the kind of exact product and service match for those exact industries and challenges. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I guess because we've had success at filling those kind of demos and filling my schedule, have just moved into the next exciting phase of having another person on my team, and kind of not being alone at the tip of the spear. So it's been a good journey.
Yeah. 2 spears now. That's awesome. Talk to me about talk to me about the hire. And we don't have to go into names and things, but I'm curious, why was now the right time for this individual? And then what were you looking for in this hire?
So it's a great question, because I genuinely don't know if I did it differently than anyone else, because I think a lot of what I read, and there's a lot of talk online about the SDR role being shifting, and I totally agree. And it's even hard to keep up on people's opinions about it. But I wanted someone who would have the energy of an SDR and a love for sales and, the activity that needed to be done. That, I know I can say with a straight face, like, I've walked the walk. I know what this takes. I know it can be done. I know these metrics can be hit. And wanting to double that, double that activity, so we can, double the shots we're taking. But given, what we just talked about with the different channels and closing strategies, I needed someone with broad go-to-market experience and adaptability. And so you're kind of looking for that, you would think that's, very high level kind of experienced sales person where people might get drawn into going, so I try to hire that person who's been in enterprise sales or, VP kind of level. And what I found it is possible to find amazing people with that personality skill, with that drive, but also that strategic skill. And I think the thing that I was kind of most proud of, and it did take a lot of time, is that I ran a really rigorous sales hire process where I kind of learned from, bigger companies. And I called the role the sales and GTM, like sales and go-to-market associate. And that was my best way of describing what the role actually was. And I think OpenAI started calling their whole sales team the GTM team. And I kind of like it based on what we do. And I ran a real tech test that they could demo software and a real go-to-market strategy test. So like real role play, real skill testing instead of just what we had done previously with some other hires. Great processes also, but it was a bit more shooting from the hip and needing to fill roles quickly. And I think we did a good job kind of running a real process. And I was very happy with that and where we ended up.
Right on. And so you hired a kind of a hybrid SDR kind of go-to-market individual?
Yeah. So it was someone that had, many years of sales experience, that had, that still has high energy for that kind of outreach and cold and level of activity that we need, which would be associated with an SDR role. But I also need someone who can come in and change our sales automations and think about new target markets and really kind of be a partner in, with me on the kind of connected go-to-market team. And in theory, that was hard to find, and it did take a little time. But I think it was worth waiting for that right person and personality fit to fill that role. So yeah,
I love it. So I appreciate you sharing the story. What's the last question? What's the next major milestone? What are you all doing to get there?
Next major milestone. Well, the next major company milestone is, it is actually completely related to go-to-market and sales, is we have an amazing product now, but we're really launching I would say the full company in the next month or two. There's a larger launch that will pretty much revolutionize or add to our current go-to-market motion. We've been setting it up to connect to that launch. And so that launch it will be kind of the first. We do have a trial now, but we haven't really been pushing that. And it's going to be we're trying to create our own best channel. You mentioned all the difficulty about demand gen channels. We think we can create our own demand gen channel by creating a product that attracts that attention and then feeds into the rest of the go-to-market motion. So really the milestone is launching that and getting, hundreds, if not thousands of customers to sign up at a more kind of direct to consumer level. But with the kind of more advanced go-to-market sales motions we put in place to, add more services and provide more value. And we already kind of have that in place. And, then we'll blow past our, initial customer goals, our initial revenue goals, and get into the next phase of the company. So it's kind of a unique answer, I guess, but I hope it changes the motion for the positive like we think it will. So
love it. Chris, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story and kind of doing the awkward, let's talk about kind of Topline, but not talk about too much about the product itself. I didn't want this to come across as an ad. I wanted this to come across as this is Chris's story, your journey. But now let's take a breather. Let's talk about, tell me about what Topline does and how you help companies, who you serve, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I've touched on it a little bit, but yeah, Topline, we're trying to really create access to the tools and services to grow your business that people don't have access to. And that kind of stems from, we have a platform where people can, instead of buying 10 different tools, they can have one, Topline OS is what we call it, operating system to run their business. And that's sales, marketing, automation, email, calendars, all the things you need pretty much to run your business. We also have the marketing services, like productized services. So people can access, accessible prices for services they might need for graphic design and one-pagers, things that you might not have, like almost fractional CMO, but again, kind of in that same package. So you don't have to go many different places. And then what we really are building is lead generation, specialized services, lead generation. And this is what people ultimately want, is leads and better and more opportunities. And, marketing and sales infrastructure and all the things are in service of managing those leads. But if people can't get them, then, what's the point? So that's what we're working on. And it's a mission of access and kind of meritocracy and making sure the best professionals in each industry kind of can win. So we have big, ambitious goals and we're excited for the coming months.
Love it. If somebody's looking to learn a little bit more about Topline OS or connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, I think just chris@topline.com is the best way to reach me. Happy to talk directly. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. And and also my sales journey. It's something I don't, get to talk about as often as I'd like. And I hope it was a, unique story in some ways. And it's been super great learning from you in the process.
Love it. It is great. I really appreciate you sharing it. It's always fun to explore that journey. I think you and I are kind of unique animals in being, I shouldn't say totally unique, because now it's a little bit more common for us dirty salespeople to go into entrepreneurship. But I think when I first started, I remember looking around the co-working space and I had, 100 engineers and product managers that were looking at me all pissed off because I was just talking all the time to customers, prospects. I was doing these interviews and they're like, why won't this guy shut up? I'm trying to do deep work. I'm trying to stay in flow and fucking call and just
build your product.
Yeah. And they were just trying to sit heads down and build. And so, I think, there should be more of us. There is a strong place for us, in that founding team. And it is super helpful, even if we are an annoying breed of humans.
Love it.
Right on. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll see y'all next week.